guys, welcome back to Live for the Journey. I'm your host, Monica Velasquez, and we are here today with...
your co-host, Jackson Keenan, and...
my name is Simon Juarez. I'm a UMHB student.
Yep, so we, as you heard it, we've taken a UMHB student, and we're pretty much going to ask him a few political questions, sort of what he believes in, who he's supporting, especially coming up to this pivotal 2024 election. So I guess we'll start off with the questions.
Let's clarify, we did not take him. He willingly came.
I willingly
Sorry,
came.
we did not.
Because you were like, we took
I was
him.
invited to be here and I'm here.
Yeah. Okay. So,
Jax? Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay. Our first question is kind of what's your political party, and let me restart that. What political party do you feel most assigned to?
I would say I'm a part of the left. I do believe that the Democratic Party represents opportunity and chance, and I think that's what America was founded on.
So with that, who are you voting for this coming election?
Kamala Harris.
And do you have any specific reasons why towards that?
One, because she is a part of the left, and unfortunately I have to abide by that, you know. But also because I do think that my understanding with Donald Trump is I do think that he's a great businessman for sure. His foreign policy is very well put together. However, I think we need to worry about more what's on the inside right now, which is our Americans. I think that right now Kamala Harris wants to worry a lot about Ukraine and the Palestine army, which I think is great for them. I think it's fine that we're donating money, but again, student loan crisis is a very big deal right now. The two out of the three biggest issues right now in America is unfortunately marijuana and abortion, and she wants to address both those things, and so I think that's important.
Okay. So although you are, what made you sway away from the right, and especially Donald Trump for this coming election? I know you said you're part of the left, so you're voting for the left, but what are the decisions that made you move towards the left?
For sure. Yeah, I think that's a good question. And I'll be completely honest with you. Had Joe Biden still been up there, I think it'd be a little bit harder for me to still vote for the left. But because the Kamala Harris vice president is taking this stand, I think that it's a little bit easier for me to lean in that direction. Especially since, again, one of the issues that our generation has is that they're all a little bit older and she's very young, and that's something that we're looking forward into. And so that's the reason why I stray away from Donald Trump. Don't call me an ageist on this one, but it's just something that we all seem to value and something that we all seem to fight for, even in class I hear. And so that's one critical component. But I would say also, the question is, why do I stray away from Donald Trump, it seems like? A lot of his values I just can't necessarily align with. I may be a very Christian and faithful man, but if you're going to be a president, I don't really care too much about animal rights as much as maybe he does. And I care more about the abortion rights more than he does. And then again, those are things that I think the left addresses pretty well.
So what is your favorite political policies from the Harris campaign that you've heard of so far?
Yeah. Student loan crisis, I think I've already mentioned it before, but I do think that's a very impactful thing right now. And it can get a little sticky from an economical standpoint, right? Because if we just forgive everyone's debt, well, someone has to pay for that, right? And the solution is typically going to be the bank has to pay for it. I mean, I believe it was either Ohio or another state that threatened to sue Congress had that been passed. But overall, if we take away all that money that you have to pay for, I have to pay for, and you have to pay for to the student debt crisis, that money can go towards something else. And we've seen a bit of a small sample size from that, because in 2020, whenever we had the COVID relief, that I believe it was only $1,800 or $1,600, but that money got spent back into the economy.
Yeah.
And so the idea is that once we get that relief, we are then able to put it back into the economy. So maybe there's a potential chance that that money essentially gets recycled in a healthy manner versus it just going right back to the banks. And I think my final point there is just that I think the solution to that also is just to take care, get rid of the interest rates. Okay. I do believe that if the government and Congress is going to help us, take away that interest rate, and it kind of meets everyone in the middle. The banks will still get their money, we still get the opportunity to go to college, and well, there's just no interest right there, you know.
So you're a big fan of lessening student debt, but you would gladly meet in the middle to cut interest rates or remove interest rates altogether. Is that correct?
Yes, I would say so.
Okay. Is there any questions that you want to ask before we start getting into like the
I guess policies? I've heard an argument that, keep in mind I don't know anything politics, so if I say something and you're like that's idiotic, it probably will be. So I've heard a stance of people say if you're going to college, then you should rightfully pay that off. You should rightfully, pay your dues, and how do you feel about that stance or that statement?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, you know. But and the one thing that I can say as a bit of a caveat is that 18-year-olds, 17-year-olds are being told at a very young age that you need to have your life figured out.
Mm-hmm.
And so do they really know what is the best return on investment? Do they even know what that really means?
Yeah.
And how many of those students have parents that also went to college to guide them in the right direction? I was a student at Baylor University, and to spend 4 years there, I would have been $260,000 in debt. By the time I'd be 21 years old. Is that fair to me to know? Do 18-year-olds really understand that process? So pay your bills? Absolutely. I'm the biggest fan of paying your bills. But even when you're going in college, you're not just paying student loans. You know, you're also going to probably take out credit cards. You're probably going to need a vehicle, and then you're going to need things to pay for as far as food. And so I think if you take away that tuition cost, even if you were to just half it, there's a more chance that that money can again be spread across the economy. And paying your bills, I think, is really important, but I think it's even more important post-graduation, right? Because let's say I was $260,000 in debt. I am responsible to pay it back. But if I don't, if it hurts my credit, it hurts all these things, I can now no longer afford to buy a house, a vehicle, probably start a family. And the whole point of the American dream is to have those opportunities, and they're taken away from me at the young age of 18 because I didn't know that majoring in history would only make me a history teacher.
Oh, okay.
Just my last point on that.
Yeah.
Do you think, although deciding it plays a major role of it, do you think it's the job of the universities or the students when it comes to deciding people's career and swaying people into more money-making career fields instead of just cutting debt or cutting student debt and stuff like that, trying to get people to sway to money-making things instead of not taking away, but cutting the student debt? Yeah.
Do you just me who do I get more upset with, the institution, or what do you?
Yeah. So like, my thinking on it is, in your opinion, do you think that the institution should play a bigger role in? Let me preface this story. In your opinion, if institution took a bigger role in swaying people into more money-making majors, do you believe that we don't need to cut out student debt, or you still do you still want student debt to be cut out even if universities play a bigger role in swaying people's majors?
I think that's actually a really good question. I would actually go as far as to say that I do blame the institution. All colleges are at fault as well. I can't just be mad at Congress, right? Because at the end of the day, institutions set their prices. They're the ones who set it. But they're also allowed to tell you, no, you cannot come here. So that price gap should be a little bit on them. Because if you cannot afford this campus, let's put you in debt so you can come in here. And then we're going to tell you, you know what, you can major in art, you can major in history because you couldn't major in finance. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the weight and the return on investment for any degree has gone down. And that's another point of mine. And I feel like that's why it's a student debt crisis, because the cost of institutions have gone up over the past 40 years. But the weight of the degree is like either been the exact same or it's dwindled down. So I think it's kind of, they are held responsible. Everything is a business. So.
Okay, so we're gonna kind of go into the hot topics, especially with the debate coming up. Or I guess the debate would be
posted by the
time this gets posted.
Yeah.
Anyway, so some of the big topics for this upcoming election, I think the biggest one that a lot of Americans are looking forward to or looking out for is inflation. I mean, inflation under President Biden's presidential reign and Kamala Harris's VP reign. Inflation has gone through the roof. How, in your opinion, how do you think Kamala Harris will cut back the rising inflation?
She recently wants to release a policy called price gapping, where essentially the food and goods, I believe it's an institution, would be essentially taxed for any time that they try to create a gap between the pricing of something. Now, if you're asking me if that's a good idea, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just because I do think it's hard to tell someone that this is what you're going to charge because this is how much we think it is. I don't know how that plays out from a legal perspective.
Yeah.
But I do understand from a tax and inflation perspective, maybe that could work because we want to create right now a standstill for everyone else to catch up, because that is the main topic right now. There's a 20% increase on eggs and milk and all that type of stuff. And you can always pick it back to the government, but I think at the end of the day, I actually blame industries. Did you know that because Ozempic has picked up in popularity, that Nestle has increased their calories in all their foods to combat that? how come the government didn't step in that process?
I wouldn't be truly surprised. It sounds about necessary.
Yeah, that
Right.
sounds. That's wow.
Right.
Interesting.
And so, am I mad at the government for trying to step in? No, necessarily. I don't even think that they can be the hero. But again, I'm at the institution for setting these fake prices because, yes, I do think inflation did play a role,
Yeah.
but that was a role in 2020, and now we're in 2024, and here we are trying to address it again. Do I think that Kamala Harris has the best plan? It seems like it. Donald Trump's plan is just do the same thing he did in 2019. The problem is that may be considered outdated now, and taxing the rich is Kamala Harris's plan, and I do think that trickle-down effect can play very well.
Yeah. So, kind of another big topic will be immigration. This has been a major topic. We've seen a bunch. We've seen the highest number of immigrants, especially in 2023, that went through the Mexican-American border. This was again under the viewpoint of Joe Biden and therefore Vice President Kamala Harris. How do you think Harris will cut back or slow down the immigration crisis that is currently happening in the United States?
I am a strong enough Democrat to know that I do not believe that her goal is to slow down that process. I believe that they will probably elongate that process. I believe the process will be to allow them to come in legally. I don't believe that there is going to be the standpoint of let's send down people to kind of stop it. That's why Governor Abbott and Joe Biden were a bit of a lawsuit for a minute there because Abbott put down his own things to stop the immigrants from coming in. But the truth is, I don't think that there really is a hardcore answer for her. I believe that she's only visited the border even just one time. And so to me, that's a problem. I do think that raises a bit of a red flag. But I also don't believe that the solution is to stop everybody.
Yeah.
They always talk about that 2%, the 1% who messes up for everybody. Well, can we talk about the 98% who just want a chance? Everyone in this room I don't see is all white, blonde hair, blue eyes. We all were having given a chance at some point in our ancestors and generations. I think that can still reign true.
Okay, so this is kind of going for the campaign sort of things. Trump's top campaign thing is, of course, immigration. Do you think that is going to hurt the left, that Kamala Harris is not choosing to make immigration a top priority, and it almost feels like it's a third or fourth priority, especially with her lackluster visits to the wall, even as a VP? Do you think that hurts the campaign?
I would say that it doesn't hurt the left because the reasoning is most of the immigrants are coming in through Texas. And so it's going to be from Texas, New York, and I believe any of the top states in part of the United States. And a lot of them are already on the left, and Texas is on the right. And so we already know there's a problem here. So, but she isn't aiming to win Texas. And so she's aiming to win those other more left-leaning states. Where we kind of win is those swing states, so Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania didn't have an immigration issue, so they really don't see it very often. And so do I think it hurts her that it's a piggyback topic? Not necessarily, but I don't think she was ever going to win the votes back had she made it a 1 or 2 topic.
Okay. This one is a big thing. It's flared up. This is kind of a touchy subject for the school, and that's just the preference. It's abortion. Are you pro-choice or pro-life?
I have always been pro-choice.
Could you explain why?
Yeah, I think that we have always been founded on the right to choose in any given context. We are always given the right to choose. Now, I am a man at the end of the day, and there is 2 women in this room, so I do believe that they are given the right to choose. And because the solution is not you give birth and they go straight into some place where they're allowed to be adopted and they spend 2 years there, 3 years there, and then we don't even know really what they end up at. Is it really a better solution? We do see that states that allowed for abortion 10 years later, their crime rates get cut in half because a lot of those kids don't have to do certain things that they would not have to do had they had good families. I believe that a good family, a good household can make the best decision for a child. And if they cannot, why would I want to take that away from them? And I don't believe that at the end of the day it is my business, but the right to choose should be available to everybody. And if you don't want to have one, you don't have to get one either.
So we try to stay away. We're trying to stay away from faith in this argument, but I think the question kind of naturally comes up when talking about abortion. How does being pro-choice affect your faith? And if it doesn't, that's your answer.
No. I think that's a good question because I do think as Christians we believe that there is love and faith in everything, and that everyone, again, deserves a chance to live, I guess, in some capacity. I don't know. I think that's the hardest thing for me to kind of address.
Yeah, I think I'm on the same thing because I understand your perspective and I understand, when your faith comes into it, you're like,
Right.
but I think what my personal perspective on it is, what is the government or the community doing to help these people get out of these situations where, I guess, more educational, more giving them more a chance, so maybe they're not stuck in poverty with their children, or giving them understanding of safe sex and protection and what that really means, instead of just kind of shoving it under the rug. And then they have to deal with the idea of having an abortion, because that, yes, you have a choice, but that's gonna hurt you regardless. If you may be less excited about children, it still, I think, is gonna hurt you as a person to know that you had to go endure something like that procedure. So I do think it is a very touchy subject, and I don't think that one has a good right or left answer, I personally. So yeah, that was my little tidbit on that.
Right. No, I don't think that anyone wants to actively have to get those things.
Yeah.
I don't think that it's necessarily even something that we celebrate. I think it's more of something that we keep to ourselves, and maybe spread to the father if not. I mean, that is awful, but I think at the end of the day, it's the right to choose. Only you really know that answer.
Alrighty. So we're kind of going to go into everybody's favorite topic, taxes.
Okay.
So this, I think you'd be a great person to ask, because you are a finance major. You definitely know more than me or Monica. We're both communication majors. So my question to you is, Kamala's tax program, it looks like she's going to try and increase taxes for people who make over $400,000, and then also expanding the child care credits. Do you think that helps the tax burden on the middle class?
That's a good one. I like that question a lot. It's the trickle-down effect is always supposed to happen, and if you guys ever met a millionaire, to them money kind of is nothing, right?
Yeah.
And I do understand they're already being taxed in a lot of different ways, right? Because in the state of Texas, we don't even we have state tax, we don't have income tax.
Yeah.
But the national level, they start getting taxed drastically in different ways. And so do I think adding another tax is going to help us in ways that we're going to see? Probably not. I really don't see that happening. I think that taxing the rich will probably help someone that we will never know who that is, but I don't think it helps the middle class. I think the middle class will always be screwed, whether you're left or you're right. The reasoning is because that trickle-down effect has to trickle down all the way to the bottom. Doesn't just stop to help the middle. And that's why it is called that. But do I think that that's the best solution to help the economy? I don't think that it's supposed to boost the economy. I believe it's just supposed to help us sustain what it is, to help the gross domestic profit.
Another thing, a part of the whole taxes thing, is the proposed 28% tax on long-term capital gains for Americans who make over $1 million. Do you think that's like a good amount? Do you think it should be more? Or do you think it should be less?
That is a lot of money. You're talking about $1 million. You're going to lose about $280,000 by 20, which that is substantial. And I think when you start telling millionaires that, you will then really upset them.
Yeah.
Now, I've never seen $1 million in my life.
Yeah.
I probably never even may sniff it, right?
Yeah.
And so I can't express the emotional toll on it. But I think that when we say just 1 million and we can reduce it that much, it's easy for us to be like, oh, that's a lot. But when we move it to like 500 million and we're saying we're going to take out 28% here, then we're going to take our 10% here, then we're going to take out 30% here. My next question, left or right, is what are we really going to do with that money? Is that money going to fuel childcare? Is that money really going to go to Ukraine? And where is this money going to go, and how is it going to be useful? One of the biggest problems with the left is that we always want money from taxes, but we never really have a full agenda of what we're going to do with all this money. And even whenever we do announce what we're going to do with this money, again, it's like, what could we have done better with it? We're always going to take a step back and look at that question. Did we need to give Ukraine $2.5 trillion, billion? I don't know. Do they need it? They needed it, but how does that benefit us?
Yeah.
The student debt crisis, that benefits us. The groceries benefits us. So do I think that we should tax them more or less? 28% is a lot. I mean, that's like a quarter out of your paycheck every single week, essentially, you know?
Yeah. All right. So now we're going to move on to more foreign policy. My first question on foreign policy is, like, through the podcast, it definitely seems like you're a very American first, left-leaning person, or left-leaning politically. what is your opinion on foreign policy, just out the gate?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that foreign policy is actually the hardest topic to actually be able to discuss. One from my own perspective, because I just live in Texas, in Temple, Texas, at that, and so I don't know what it is like to be on the other side. I don't know what it's like to see bombs dropping over my head and praying that someone can help me. So it is easy for a lot of people to say that live over here, no, don't give them that money, right?
Yeah.
But if we're on their shoes, we would want as much help as possible. And then the next question is how do we know we're helping out the right person, the good guy, the bad guy?
Yeah.
And I tell people, the people who are committing genocide are probably on the bad side. But even then, it's like, that is a lot of money that we probably needed to see on our parts, because we have to take care of ourselves in order for us to stay a strong, powerful nation. We do need to have money at the end of the day, and we can help out other nations. But I don't know how much we can give before we have to help ourselves out. And I do think that the purpose of NATO is to help everyone, but I think that NATO is kind of they're supposed to be the big sister that never really shows up. You know, they're supposed to have control of these different things, and I think that they never really do their job very well, and that's why we still have wars sometimes. Do I think that Russia's doing the right thing? Absolutely not. But it's the trickiest topic, and also I do think that mainstream media can also exacerbate certain things. I don't think that the entire Northwestern Hemisphere is having like a World War III situation going on. I mean, there's parts where people can just walk across, they can speak Italy, French, all these different languages very civilly, and then there's other parts of that same part where, I mean, they are literally trying to kill themselves. So I think that foreign policy, for me, I can never give a direct answer because it's so complicated. That is the hardest one for me, for sure.
So I have a question. So
Yeah.
like you said about like you don't think like the whole area is like under attack or under. Do you think social media, certain people with bad mindsets can actually blow it, not out of proportion because it is a very horrific war, but do you think now since seeing it from how social media has advanced, because before there was no social media when things like this would happen, so how do you think that is kind of impacting and can be negative, I guess like used out of proportion maybe in a way?
Yeah, I think that's a good thing. You brought up 2 points that I spent a lot of time on, which is one, the technology itself, how you're able to reach that information.
Yeah.
Both parties believe both parties are wrong because of where they get the information.
Okay.
And so I tell people a lot of times, if you think about it, your phone, when you're on TikTok and Instagram, the job of the app is for you to stay on it. And so if you're left-leaning or right-leaning, it's going to show you feeds from that party.
Sure.
And so you're going to see an extremist, and then you're going to see extremists on the left and the right, and then one's going to bash the other. And so what you're filled with in your mind is that there's only, oh my God, they're right, we're wrong. And then on the other side, they're like, oh my God, we're right and they're wrong, because the technology itself, these industries, they know how to get you to stay on your phone.
Yeah.
And so I think the real way to only get information is to read policies that they themselves have written, which is already a drag in and of itself. If you've ever seen them, they look like the Bible. I mean, they're hard to read. But do I think that it's evil and bad? I do think it's evil and bad, because I do think that we can exacerbate something. You yourself can watch a car accident and tell him it was the craziest thing you've ever seen in your life. It was the most horrific thing. And then in his mind, maybe he enhances that thought. Yeah. And then when you put a video on it, he's like, that was a fender bender. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I think the media can play a huge role in those types of things.
Yeah. That's really interesting to just, social media in itself is new. We grew up with it like barely, and then there's children growing up and seeing things like this, and they don't even understand what it is. And like I just think that's probably another issue in our country, social media, like the monitoring of it. I don't think social media is a bad thing, but it can definitely be a bad thing, if that makes sense.
I think that social media needs to be more regulated.
Yeah.
I think it's the most addictive thing on earth, and with all this data that it has access to, it's weird to me that we all know it's addictive and there's no regulations on it. Yeah. So I think that is pretty interesting, and because you can get at any age as well, I think is a problem.
Yeah.
I know you're not supposed to have it until you're 15 or 16, but even that's
you can make a fake account.
You can.
You know what I did at 12 years old?
Right.
All the fake accounts. Do you have anything to add?
No, but I kind of want to piggyback on it. For our next question, quick little detour. It's gonna go more on the campaign side of things. We were just talking about social media. How do you think Kamala Harris has dealt with the social media thing. You know, when she announced it, there's this big wave, and now it feels like we're kind of in a weird stance. How does she use social media to push herself forward in such a tight election?
Yeah, I think who helped the left out a lot was actually someone on the right, Vivek Ramaswamy. He was the first kind of, I would say, mainstream Republican who went on TikTok, and so now we're seeing Republicans use TikTok now because he was he was a leading candidate for a while there, and so do I think that she had a leg up because of someone else? Yes. Do I think she's taking advantage of it? Absolutely, she has to. So she's going to use all her platforms, but the campaign itself, I do know, was just a good launch because how much money was donated to her. I'm pretty sure it was upwards to maybe like $500,000. I don't know the exact number, but it was a rather large amount. And so it seems like being able to piggyback off of someone else's success to finish out the race, because I think that Americans love a good movie sometimes. And this is kind of what this feels like, right? Because Trump has this very villain-esque feel to him, and that's kind of like something that people like to draw into him. And Kamala will always feel like this, always a strong word, will feel like...
Depending on where you stand.
Right.
Depending on where you stand.
Will kind of feel like this hero because Joe Biden had to step down. Well, who's next best person? The person that he selected, right? And so I think that's the reason why. But I don't. Yeah, that's my answer.
All right. I think my last question for you, or last few questions, depending on how this goes, is how confident are you in Kamala winning this election?
I'm not very confident at all, actually. I would say that I feel more confident that she has a better chance of winning than Joe Biden. Joe Biden, I do believe, was going to get blown out in the waters. I think with this election, it'll be a lot more tighter. I know with those swing states, the race is a lot more closer.
It'll be big.
And so do I think that it's going to be a blowout? No, not. But I do think that it will be a very tight race. I think it'll probably be 46-52. Like, it's going to be close.
To piggyback off that, do you think her, being a woman, does that impact her negatively or positively? Or is it kind of mixed, depending on where you are in the United States?
I think it helps her out because, again, like I was mentioning earlier, she is younger and she's a woman. And so I think that helps her out because ultimately our generation and some, I would say, generation above us, really we're tired of seeing these old men kind of being in there.
Okay.
And so I think now that she's like a completely different atmosphere, she's a completely different setting.
Yeah.
Where I think that she is kind of lackluster though, is that she's going to have to go up against someone who, and this may even answer your question a little bit further, who is more experienced in debating, in going head to head. Because we have seen Kamala Harris go one-on-one in debates and lose them because she has to be able to speak very well of herself and the American people outside of just saying that we're going to do it, So I think it does help her.
Crystal ball time. I know this is going to be released after the second debate, but might as well. This is the night of the debate, the big question.
Yeah.
You can use your magical crystal ball.
Okay.
Who do you think is winning? Who do you think gains more from this debate?
Ooh. I will say that I think Donald Trump will probably gain more from this debate. I think that he is just so much better on the mic than most people are. I think the only person that was better on the mic was Vivek Ramaswamy, and I think that this is kind of just her weakness. This is one of her. It's just like it's no different than seeing that guy who's very charismatic in class, but on exams, like he's not the best, versus a person who's really shy but really go on the exam. I don't think that she's a strong person for debates. So crystal ball, I think that Trump will probably do really good in this debate.
Alrighty. Is there anything else you want to add before we wrap this up?
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on here.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for coming on and saying
a great conversation.
Yeah, it was a good conversation. That's our goal here, is to help inform. We're not trying to have a debate here. That's not what this podcast is for. This is really just to help inform people about different opinions. This is, of course, the side of the left. A person who political opinions land more on the left of things. So we will also have a political discussion with someone who lands more on the right of things. But again, thank you so much for this. This was more than what we asked for.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.